right, guys, we are live. We'll give folks just a second here to file in and take their virtual seats. Hey, Chase, Dustin, Manuel. Yeah, we got a bunch of people here. So thanks everyone for being here. Hop into the chat, say hello. We're excited to get things started. With that, well, I'll go ahead and jump in here. So welcome everybody again to the inaugural edition here of OneVision's Insights webinar series. Today, we're here to talk about the idea of thinking big and starting small. This is a really critical topic because, when it comes to driving innovation and change within our businesses, many of us will often fall into one of two traps. Number one, either we get analysis paralysis and kind of fail to get out of the starting blocks altogether, or perhaps even worse, we do hit the ground running, but we end up, sinking a bunch of time and energy into building something that nobody actually wants. And we obviously want to avoid both of those traps. So today, we're going to give you a battle-tested formula for doing just that. You can see here, I've got a quick agenda up on the screen of some of the key points that we're going to touch on. Ultimately, we're going to focus mostly on how to do this in the context of launching a new service program. But I do think it is worth noting that these ideas generalize very well, and they will apply equally to any sort of new product or service that you might be considering within your business. So if you're considering expanding into a new vertical, adding different features to your existing service plans and so forth. Again, these ideas should generalize very well across those. We're looking forward to a collaborative discussion. If you have any questions, comments, feedback at all throughout the course of the webinar today, please do drop those into the chat. We would be happy to field those. And with that, we're going to get rolling with some quick introductions. Before I do that, I do want to launch an opening poll here just to kind of get a gauge on where we're at in the room. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll right now. And the question here is, what best describes your experience with launching new services in the last couple of years? So once again, I've got a poll up there. If everybody can just take a moment to drop in some feedback, that'll help us kind of understand where everybody's at in terms of kind of working through new product and service launches. While those answers come in, I'm going to go ahead and do some quick introductions. We'll get through these pretty quick, and then we'll jump in to the meat and potatoes here. So my name is Jason Griffing. I'm the Director of Product at OneVision. I've spent very close to 20 years in the CEDIA industry. More than half of that time was spent down in the trenches as a residential integrator. The rest of that time has been spent here at OneVision, helping integrators really lock horns with what I often call the service challenge. So I know the struggle well. I've been working on this problem for quite a long time on both sides of the fence in terms of here at OneVision and as an integrator. We've also got Jennine Filipi here on the call from our partner development team at OneVision. She leads that team and works shoulder to shoulder with integrators across North America, really helping to transform their service operations. She's got a deep background in customer success and a passion for helping entrepreneurs navigate the countless challenges of running a business. Jennine, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we've got Ian. Ian's our Senior Technical Product Manager here at OneVision. He's spent more than a decade building software and systems that power organized, scalable service departments. First at IHG, which many of you on the call may remember. They were one of the pioneers in remote monitoring and management here in the CEDIA channel. And then for the last 7+ years, we've been lucky enough to have him here at OneVision, helping us build out our platform. He's passionate about iterative product development, creating value, and translating customer feedback into both happy users and results for the business. Ian, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and we'll share the results out so everybody can have a look at those. So it looks like by far, most of you guys have had some mixed results. So some have worked, some have flopped. We've got a few people who haven't launched anything, and then a handful that have been either very successful. Kudos to whoever answered on that question. And then finally, a couple of people that have been struggling. So lots of effort, very little traction. So those results track. I think those make sense generally with what I've experienced personally. I imagine Jennine and Ian are probably the same way. And they also definitely track with the results that we see here working at OneVision with integrators across the country to help them kind of optimize service and support. So with that, let's jump into to the discussion here. I want to start by coming to you, Jennine. So we see these kind of mixed results in the poll. Some people have had some success. Most people have had mixed results. You've obviously had a lot of experience working with integrators across North America. kind of navigating these big transitions within their business, what would you say are the key attributes that really define an integrator who is successful at driving these sorts of changes versus others who get stuck?
It's interesting because you would think it would be the integrators with the big ideas or the ones that have the most resources or the largest teams or the best foundation. What I've found is the most successful partners that are able to get success off the ground and hit goals are those that actually are comfortable being uncomfortable. They lean into the discomfort. They have a tolerance for it. They understand it's going to be messy at times. They take it step by step and they recognize that. So they take step-by-step action versus getting overwhelmed in planning mode and just kind of roll with it and know the discomfort is coming. And I would say that really separates when I see our partners that really launch successfully. It really is just being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such a great point, and I've experienced this a lot, both in business and in like personal development settings. I think that discomfort with these changes out of the gate can unfortunately really push a lot of people away. But just learning that that discomfort is not like a sign that you're doing something wrong or a sign
Right.
that you should be like pushing in a different direction. Often that discomfort is just an organic part of the process, and we really have to learn to, be able to sit with that and then kind of compartmentalize it, right? Put
Right.
it off to the side and really jump in and do the things that need to be done in spite of those feelings. I think that's great. That's great
Yeah,
advice.
100%. And the other thing too is sometimes in that discomfort and overwhelm, just doing one thing. Let's get one piece of this thing off the ground. Let's give the team some relief, some bandwidth to think through things, get a little confidence, go, yeah, it was worth being uncomfortable. And then it just becomes, the process becomes less uncomfortable as you go with it.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
what I would say
exactly.
stands out the most.
Yeah. Yeah, Ian, I would love to come to you on this same question. You spend a lot of your time solving complex business problems through mostly technology in your case, but again, these principles really generalize very well. What would you say defines success? What are the key attributes that make some particular person or initiative successful versus those that kind of get bogged down out of the gate?
Yeah, I think it really all comes down to approach and how you approach solving a big complex problem. And you really have to start by defining like what your North Star is. When I'm going out to develop some new product or service, usually what I'm doing is I'm starting with writing. And on the page, I'm trying to write out like, hey, in the best case scenario, if we had all the resources in the world and we had like our magic wand that we waved, like what would the results be? And kind of start writing from there. And once I've kind of got that defined, you have like this again North Star that you're shooting for, and you can start to break down the problem into smaller and smaller pieces. I think that the best people are able to at solving these complex challenges are able to start with like their why and the business results that they want to have as their outcome. And then from there, they are really able to distill that down into actionable items and steps that they need to take one at a time. You always want to start really small versus try to tackle some big chunk of work all at once.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's definitely like a balance there, right? Because, starting small is that doesn't mean that you're thinking small, right? Just like the title of the webinar, you do want to think big. You do have to sit down at the beginning of these programs. Like, for example, we're focused on, maybe helping integrators deliver premium services to their clients. Like, it is very important. I love, by the way, your recommendation to use writing for something like this. I think a lot of us limit our thinking about writing to thinking of it as a way to communicate ideas, but writing is also incredibly effective at helping us create new ideas. It's a great tool for like clearer thinking. And so sitting down, something we do internally a lot at OneVision is write what we call requests for comment, or RFCs is what we call them internally. And these have really become a staple for us internally whenever we're thinking about any change, whether it's a big one or a small one, starting with that writing process, circulating that around, getting everybody aligned. It's a great way to smoke out issues, uncover blind spots. and generally just kind of promote alignment across the company. And then, yeah, I love that idea of like, yes, think big, define your North Star. Where is it that you want to go? But then don't stop there. Like you can't go boil the ocean. You have to break these things down and really take them in smaller chunks. And that's really the hardest part, I feel like, of the planning process. But if you get that right and you can do a good job of reducing your scope down and defining a good, starting point, that'll make things a lot easier. And I know before we wrap up today, we're going to give some examples of what that would look like, in a service context specifically. But I think just that general idea is really important. I do want to actually launch another poll here as we're talking about kind of launching things from the outset and what are the biggest blockers maybe that prevent people from achieving success. I'm going to launch a second poll here. This poll, as you're going to see, is which of these is your biggest blocker to launching new services? So kind of if you had to take a look at this and say, hey, we want to launch a new product or service, which is the thing that has traditionally sort of stood in our way? That'd be really helpful for us to know as well. While those results are coming in, Ian, I want to come back to you, and let's talk a little bit more about this scoping idea and how critical it is to define this scope for version 1. The idea we talk about internally a lot is let's focus on what it's going to take to get from 0 to 1. Talk to us about your process of kind of going from that, hey, we've got this big North Star vision that we want to go achieve. How do we break that down? What's the framework that you recommend people kind of use to think through that?
Yeah, if I'm just thinking about the scoping process in general, honestly, there's a lot of really good tools now out there for helping you, really uncover these. So, the way that I'm looking at it today is that I start with the North Star and the document. And then from there, I kind of start to write out like some of the known challenges that we have. Maybe there are differing opinions within the business. Maybe we've had feedback from clients or customers about what like business results they would like to see, what functionality they would want, what maybe works for the program, or potential challenges that we might have. For example, like there might be a fear that not all clients want to pay a monthly fee for a service plan. So you write that out and you just put in the document all your different blockers. And from there, you start to take shape like, okay, what are the requirements for achieving this? And like, how do we like break this down? Honestly, like using AI tools such as like ChatGPT or something of that nature can really help you further define maybe like what scope would really look like. And I would highly recommend leveraging those tools to help you start to build out maybe actionable items and uncover the unknown unknowns. A lot of times when there are things that are unknown, those are the things that will pop up later in your product development process or service development process and be big blockers down the line. So it's about trying to uncover those as fast as possible, decouple where you can, and really avoid analysis paralysis. Start getting out and talking to customers. So for example, like I'd recommend like getting really practical, especially when you're rolling out a service program. You can do things like really small actionable steps. For example, you might want to start by just having some conversations with customers and understanding like how service is going for them. Is it working well? Do they feel like they're getting a good response? And then from there, like you start to realize like you also have another cohort of users that might be your internal employees. How are they feeling that service is going? And you're starting to gather that feedback, and you realize, oh my God, like I've got some clients that are texting me, or my employees, some people that are doing email. There's just chaos all over the place. So maybe the best thing to do is start by funneling all support requests into one place. And then after that, you realize, well, some people feel like they should like skip the line and things of that nature, or they don't want to pay for service. So then you decide, okay, that's okay. Let's define like our terms of service and make sure that all customers have to abide and sign this terms of service so we can have a consistent process. Then after that, you realize like maybe there's some inconsistency in your ticketing workflows. Okay, well, we start to do routing where we have like a tier 1 person that's answering all phone calls and emails. And then if something needs to be escalated because it can't be handled by your receptionist or something of that nature, then you assign it to a technician. After that, you can start to like do things like layer in plans and start to sell this service. But really, it's by breaking the problem down into small actionable pieces and incrementally provide value to your business and your customers, and ultimately make all your stakeholders happy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all great stuff. So there's a few directions I want to go in here. So we're going to kind of tackle these in order. So I want to share the poll results here momentarily, that those came in. I also want to come to you, Jennine, on this question of kind of breaking things down and what does that look like, for example, where we do it. But I think it's worth pausing here because a question did come in that I think would be really helpful to have Ian address, which is what's an example of a prompt that you could use with ChatGPT during this early stage of ideation? And I absolutely love this question because I'm a huge user of AI. I'm using it constantly every day, 30 times a day. I'm in there asking for various things. And in my experience from just talking to like other people, this kind of early stage strategy formation, ideation is, I think, one of the most underappreciated use cases that I see, at least in my circle, of people just not realizing how absolutely beneficial it can be to just have this like AI thought partner at the early stages of something when you're trying to break down a big complex strategic initiative. So Ian, maybe just for a minute or two, talk about like more specifically about how you use AI in this context. Ian is one of our most power AI users in the company, so I'd love to hear his thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, it depends like really what stage I'm at. If I already have like sort of like this idea brewing in my head of what my North Star is, this is where the documents becomes really, really important because I've got this written down on the documents, and I've also got like users feedback. So I have got like internal stakeholders, maybe employees that are not so sure about a service program, and they've got specific flags that they're throwing up. And then you have customers that have feedback like, oh my God, I never get a consistent response from you. How do I reach you on the weekends? I have I had an urgent party or I had a party last week and I had an urgent issue. No one responded to me for 2 hours. So you're writing all this down on that document, and you can literally just copy and paste all the contents from there into GPT. And then I'll put like a couple of line breaks, and then I'll just ask a question like, what do you see as the initial requirements or some ideas of service programs that we might have? And you're kind of like having this like PhD in service that is right there at your fingertips. You can have them say, okay, like, well, what do you think is like a reasonable plan to start to tackle these problems and these issues one at a time? Like we have this North Star, but how do I get there? And GPT is going to go out there and it's going to like compile some ideas, and then you're going to think of like some unknown unknowns, some things that maybe you didn't have in your document already. And you're like, oh, but I've got this problem where my employees, like right now, they don't want to sign up to be on call on the weekend. Well, in that case, like maybe you're gonna have some ideation go on that there needs to be some sort of spiff, and you're like, okay, how do I pay for this spiff? Well, ultimately,
Hmm.
like the service program will pay for that spiff. So you continue to just uncover the unknowns with this with the chatbot, and ultimately you're going to come out with some sort of document, and you can ask it to generate a document that is sort of like a project plan, or in my world, I call it like a product requirements document that has multiple sections that breaks down the problem, all the requirements, some considerations, some blockers, and then like actionable next steps.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. I would say zooming out there, and we could easily like spend a whole 45-minute session on AI, and we will in the future. But I think the big things there, number one, context. So just giving the AI enough information and background information. That can be Slack threads, emails, whatever you can come up with. Just the beauty of AI is you just pile it in there and it'll parse through all of that very easily. And then the other thing is just treat it like a human, like you've got some PhD level expert there at your fingertips. One thing in that vein that I really love to do is like I flip the tables around and I'll tell the AI to ask me questions. I'll say, ask me 3 questions one at a time to clarify your understanding of what I'm trying to accomplish. And it'll often come up with questions that I would have never even considered. So it'll send you down different paths that you may not have ever gone down otherwise. So, and I see a comment from Logan in the chat. He does that too. So it's a really powerful technique that I learned about on a podcast. I've been using it ever since. So paying it forward here. But let's get back on track with the higher level concepts here. So I'm going to share the results of the poll. Jennine, I want to come to you here in just a moment. So when we asked, what are the biggest blockers to launching new services or products, results here pretty evenly spread. I'm actually not really surprised to see that. Out in front, we have unclear client demand. We've got no repeatable process framework, lack of time, and fear of failure / wasted effort. So again, we're pretty evenly spread across those. Jennine, I would love to come to you because, we've helped like tons of integrators at this point across North America navigate through a very major transition in their business in service, and talk a little bit about how we approach that. Again, not so much as like a sales pitch of like, hey, come work with OneVision, but even if somebody's out there and wants to do this on their own, I think they could probably take a thing or two away from the general approach that we take to kind of breaking this down. So talk a little bit about your perspectives and experiences working with integrators to decompose this problem and break it down into smaller kind of bite-sized pieces.
Right. Transform is an understatement.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, I get to do this every day. How cool is that? But yeah, so it's sort of what Ian was talking to, right? Like there's this North Star. So we have this goal when we bring our partners into our program and we get them onboarded and go through the implementation process. And there's work that needs to be done, right? To be able to deliver service at the highest level possible. And the first thing we do is we sort of give an overview of where we're going and a literal roadmap. So we actually write out a roadmap of the North Star, all the milestones, the things that need to happen. Then we push the roadmap away after we do the high level overview and we start with the tasks. There's a lot of them. So we start with one thing at a time. Let's configure your phone number for service today. Let's get your client data polished up today. So we just kind of break these tasks down. And then every once in a while, we'll bring the roadmap up to go look at how many things we've gotten done and milestones. And we like to use words like, to me, having those milestones is helpful because going from point A to completing North Star there's a lot that has to happen in between. So having milestones helps, having those opportunities to celebrate those milestones, keep the momentum going. But you have to be able to put the plan in place, possibly using ChatGPT and all the tools that Ian just mentioned. But then there's the people side of it. Like now you actually have to act on these things and breaking that down. And the one thing that I see a lot is our integrators are still running their business through this process. They're still quoting clients. They had a tech call out sick. There was a power outage in the area. I mean, they're dealing with this all the time. So it is unrealistic to expect somebody to go, this is all I'm going to do for a few weeks is get this thing off the ground. So I think we've really, I can say we pride ourselves in having that balance and understanding of carving out a little bit of time every day as a priority to work through the tasks to get to the next milestone, understanding there's still a business to run and a personal life involved too. And I think you could apply that to anything in any business.
100%. I think there's, and I think you kind of alluded to this, there's a really important like corollary point there, which is the technician calling out sick, the unexpected and unpleasant surprise on a project, the annoyed builder. Those things are never going to go away entirely. Right. So like what you really have to avoid is the trap of like thinking to yourself, okay, I'll go reinvent my service and go solve this, whatever problem it is in my company once things calm down. Right. Because like it's just, they never calm down. Right. And as soon as they feel like they're calming down, you get smacked in the face with like 10 things that you didn't expect. So, breaking things down, and just starting, whether you feel like it or not, just make a hard commitment to yourself. Like, here's what I'm going to do. I know that it may not feel significant for me to just go, like work on consolidating support volume into one phone number and email. And that's just the only thing I'm going to work on for the next however long it takes. And if it takes me 2 months to figure that out, okay, I'm going to live with that, but I'm going to know that I'm making some forward progress. and eventually like momentum starts to build, you know.
That's right.
And I think you mentioned celebrating the small wins as well is like really, really critical. One other thing that I know we talk about a lot internally that I want to make sure we emphasize for everybody is the importance of having like an internal champion, somebody kind of driving this change. This is like such a huge thing that, having worked with as many integrators as we have, this is one of the few commonalities that we can point to across the most successful integrators. You go down the line, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Every single one of them has somebody in there who's acting as a champion and really advocating for the change. I'd love for you to share your perspectives on that, the importance of having a champion, how to maybe identify that champion, how to encourage them. Just share your thoughts there. I think it's a really important point.
100%. I always say change needs a champion, not a checklist. So
Yeah, I love that.
I truly believe that. And well, let me give an example. So we recently worked with a partner whose service coordinator we identified as that person, right? The cheerleader, really bought into OneVision, knowing that there's a whole team that has to jump in and do stuff in addition to their regular workday, and having additional tasks and additional time. And she called herself the service launch lead. And she was already somebody in the organization that everybody loved and trusted and loyal, and not an owner, not a decision maker, but just everybody went to her for everything. And she called herself the service launch lead. And she really was the person when there was a blocker that could help overcome it, that was cheerleading the project, that was cheerleading the team, that was always super excited and positive, kind of minimize the little hiccups and really like got everybody excited for the wins. And I just think that is so important. We have one on our team internally. It's not me. And I value her so much because, as you know, as we're growing and as we're changing and evolving, you know, we have to bring our whole team with us. And we do have someone on our team that just keeps smiles on our faces and the jokes coming and the fun going and keeping us organized. And I can't tell you how important that is and valuable.
Yeah, it is so critical, both from that kind of morale and energy standpoint, and as well as from a tactical standpoint of somebody who's just, you know, as you go through a big project or initiative like this, like momentum is going to kind of ebb and flow, and things are going to come up, and the project might slow down, and somebody's got to be the one there, like kind of feeling that and sensing that and saying like, okay, I got to go, like, we got to push, we got to pick the ball back up and keep moving. And I think having that person is just so critical. Ian, I'd love to get your perspectives here as well. You and I work primarily, not exclusively, but primarily, it was you, especially on the technology side of the business. We would love, as technology people, if driving change was as easy as implementing some new code and pushing it out there. We know that it's not at all that easy. Oftentimes, the hardest part of these initiatives is driving the change, making sure that you've got alignment and buy-in from all of your users, that you're balancing different stakeholders and sometimes conflicting interests and so forth. So talk about your perspectives when it comes to having that real champion and that voice for change when you're driving these sorts of initiatives inside of a business.
Yeah, it's incredibly invaluable to have somebody take points on any sort of project, because there's, like we were talking about earlier, all these different milestones that you must hit, that you want to hit in order to hit that ultimate North Star goal. So I think like one of the most important things is having this person, again, like iteratively improve upon the process. And how do you like make changes iteratively? Well, you receive it via feedback loops. So as you're going through and you're building out your new service program, and maybe you hear from, I'm going to go back to the thing that Jennine said, or I think it was Jason, around maybe an on-call technician was called out sick, and you didn't have a backup in that scenario. And you're like, oh, wow, well, that clearly does not work if we're offering 24/7 service with on-site visits at a premium. So what do we do in that scenario? Okay, well, let's get a backup on call, and they get extra overtime if they have to be called in, and the primary on call, maybe like something happens with their shift, and you talk to a client and they're like, oh man, I called the number and I was on hold for 30 minutes, and I didn't really get to anyone, and I was extremely frustrated. I wish there was like just a text number that I could send a message to. And you're like, okay, that's a good piece of feedback. feedback. Let's think about that within our process as well. So you're kind of like iteratively improving based on these rapid feedback loops. You're asking for feedback from your customers and your internal team throughout the process, any single time there is a change. And you never roll out a change that can't be walked back. That's, I think, extremely important because if you can't walk something back, you can't deliver on a promise, you're going to fail everyone involved. So try your best to roll out changes that can be walked back in case it was just not the right decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that idea of like getting things out there, I call it like making contact with reality, right? Like get something out there, get some actual feedback is going to help you learn, I would say 10x faster than just abstract like planning. You could sit in a room and try to plan this service transition out for, 6 months versus identify like a minimal version that you can kind of go out there with to gather some real feedback, put it out there, and you're going to learn again like 10 times faster. Jennine, I'd love to come to you here with a specific question related to that idea. Is one of the most common things that we see, not just with integrators that we're working with, but integrators who are maybe evaluating OneVision or just friends and colleagues in the industry that we're talking to about this challenge, is the fear of the client reaction is one of
Yeah.
the biggest things that holds integrators back from making changes that I think in deep down in their hearts they know need to be made with respect to how they're delivering service. I'd love for you to talk about specifically how we see clients reacting, and then some of the ideas that might help somebody kind of get over that fear if, for example, they're not using OneVision but they want to go out and reinvent their service department in a more DIY fashion. Like, what do we typically see from clients, and what are the things that you might say to them to help them assuage that fear?
I think sometimes we underestimate how much especially our valued, loyal, legacy clients that have been with us for years and supported us. And I think we at times underestimate how agile they are and how much they want to see, us or our business succeed as well. So I think we definitely underestimate that somebody's going to be really frazzled and upset about something versus when they understand that it's moving your business forward, that they're very loyal to. It's actually not the case most of the time. And quelling the fears is really, there's a couple things. So, we go through this a lot with partners where, we spend a lot of time quelling the fears of, we do believe that clients would pay for good service or, would like to have a plan and aren't going to take it so harshly. And we work through all of that. But I think if you were someone just starting out and doing this on your own, I think just starting small. So first of all, maybe just start with a few new clients that don't know anything different and see how it goes. And like, sharpen your claws, get comfortable talking about memberships, get comfortable talking about service or the service plan or whatever it is. Learn from it, and then be able to roll it out to your legacy clients and be really comfortable with it, because you'll get a lot of feedback there. And you'll also see that clients are fine. Like they're not, if they don't get razzled about it. I think the other thing is going back to valued clients, having a segment of those that you can just go to and come up and ask like, hey, we're thinking about doing this for service, or we're thinking about rolling out some memberships. How do you feel about that? What do you think? Get their feedback, lean on them, because not only would they be appreciative that they get to have a voice in it, but again, you'd be surprised that many of these clients want to see your business succeed, and they want to see you stay around a long time, and they want to see you have a work-life balance. They love you, and you'd be surprised how well clients take it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think, take the mental energy that you're spending fretting about how clients will respond and instead allocate that to like picking up the phone and making one phone call
Right.
to a trusted client that you've worked with before to say, hey, I want to bounce something off of you. We're thinking about this. What's your perspective? Right. And like that, just one conversation is going to teach you so much more than, hours and hours of like just kind of ruminating on it
Right.
and fearing it. I think realistically, the thing that I like to let people know is like, we've done this so many times with so many different integrators, and across the board, the responses that we see are generally much, much better than the integrator coming into it thinks they're going to be. By and large, clients fall
100%.
into like one of four categories. You'll actually have some clients who are happy about it. Often these are business owners themselves. We get these emails all the time. I'm not trying to oversell this. It's not like a flood of these coming in, but there's consistent. We see this
Yes.
where a few clients will respond and say, "Hey, I'm glad you're doing this. Like it makes sense. Good for you. I've been waiting for a program like this, et cetera." So you're going to have some clients that are going to be actually genuinely happy about it. The majority of your clients probably going to be ambivalent. This is probably barely going to be a blip on their radar. I think we get a little bit of, as humans, this is like main character syndrome where we're so worried about it and we think it's going to be this kind of earth shattering thing to our clients when in reality, they're going to see the email, they're going to make a decision and they're going to move on with their lives and they're
Right.
hardly going to think about it. You're going to have some clients who are confused and need a little bit of clarification. That's going to be your third bucket. And then indeed, you may have a small handful of clients who get a little hot under the collar about it. The
Right.
key thing to know is that like there are ways to deal with those clients. Number one, some of them may, and I emphasize may deliberately there, may be clients that you don't want anymore. And we see this all the time. Integrators say, "Hey, we've been trying to get rid of that client and this is
Yeah.
great," right? And
Yeah.
those clients are out there. Generally speaking, let's assume the client is one you want to keep. There are ways to navigate that. Sometimes it's just
Right.
picking up the phone and having a conversation. It may involve kind of temporarily comping them, giving them a year free, something like that. You can do that. The key is don't let that vocal minority of clients dictate the future for your business.
Yeah.
That is like the number one thing that we like to emphasize. One other thing that you said there that I think is really important, and we kind of talked about picking up the phone and calling one client, but like I think every integrator should really have, like at OneVision, we have a partner advisory council. And these are partners that I can pick up the phone or ping them in Slack anytime and just say, "Hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think?" And you don't necessarily have to make it like a formal thing with your clients, but I think every integrator should have kind of on speed dial 5 to 10 clients that they just know this is my list. These are my clients that I can talk to if I want to make a change like this in the business. And just like identify who those clients are, know who they are, and go out and like just talk to them, just have a conversation. You're not doing anything that you can't unwind and getting that feedback is going to be a lot more valuable than kind of doing this in a bubble. Ian, I'd love for you to maybe talk about that idea too of like just going out there and in product, we say getting out of the building, right? Like
Mhm.
talk about the importance of getting outside of the building, pressuring your own assumptions, pressuring your own understanding about how things work, specifically at the outset of like a big transformation inside of the business.
Yeah. A lot of times your ideas are just your ideas, and you really don't know how they're going to be received by others until you start talking about it. So, as early as possible in the process, you got to have conversations. You have to talk to your internal team. How do they feel about being on call? How do you feel about services going and how clients are outreaching for support? And then you talk to customers and you find the customer that you trust that wants to see you succeed. You have a good relationship, and you just you share your North Star. Does your customer align with your vision? And then, when you have actionable items like, "Hey, I want to have a dedicated support number or dedicated email," so you have a consistent place to reach out to, and you bring that to your customer, gather their feedback. Maybe they're like, "Oh man, I really don't like that because I really want to call you when there's like some issue that pops up." And you just have to have this like real conversation sometimes. You're like, "Oh, well, I need to train myself on how to talk about this better because ultimately it's about positioning this in a way that is good for the customer." For example, you can say, like, "Now that I've been in business for X amount of years, I have a lot of customer outreach for support, and I want to provide my customers with a consistent experience. And if people are reaching out to me on my cell phone, I'm not always the best person to solve the problem. I have a team to do this for me or with me." So, having these conversations early and often with your customers will not only help you understand what to develop, physically what product to deliver, but also how to have conversations with your customers and internal team as well.
Yep, 100%. Um, we are coming down the home stretch here in terms of time. I want Ian, you alluded to some of this before, and we've kind of sprinkled some of these ideas in throughout, but I want to close out this discussion today trying to make things as concrete as possible for our audience. So we've talked about a lot of general principles and approaches that you can take to break down a project, get feedback, promote a champion, build momentum, etc. Let's close out by really like putting that into context. And I want to start with Ian. Like you've talked about some ideas. So maybe recap, like if you were just getting started on this journey as an integrator and you're looking at it and you're saying, my service is just kind of a mess right now. It's the Wild West. It's all over the place. It's draining my key employees. It's killing work-life balance, on and on and on. But I'm overwhelmed. I'm busy. Every day is like a new chaotic thing coming up that I didn't anticipate. Like, I don't know where I'm going to find the time. It's just, I'm overwhelmed. Break that down. Like what are one or two like good places that you could start by just decomposing that and saying, okay, well, here's a first milestone that you can focus on going and hitting.
Yeah, if I'm starting to build out my service department with consistency, the place that I'm starting, like once I've defined my North Star and kind of came up with some like general ideas of things that I want to include in it long term, I'm starting by making sure I have a consistent and repeatable process. And really, I think that starts with like software and getting your team on board and sticking with one thing and just continuing to use it. I think I see a lot of times in the industry that people are switching softwares quite frequently, and it's really tough on the business, on your employees, and it's really good to drive this consistent process. Once I define or like understand what type of software I want to start using for this process, I then start to work to funnel all of my support contacts into this one place and all my customers in this one place. So we have one single source of truth of the record. And then I start providing that consistent support. After that, you can start to layer in other different types of things, such as like 24/7 support or even after hours support, service plans, things of that nature. Once you have a basic service plan in place, maybe you start to add in annual visits, but you're just incrementally improving it over time based off of all the feedback that you're gathering in this rapid iteration.
Yeah.
I would say never get bogged down by any one step. Just try to make this incremental improvements every single day or in every single week.
Yeah, I think that's like such a foundational piece that like it doesn't feel glamorous or sexy. Like you kind of want to, your temptation might be to start with like, let's go define our service plans and price points and figure out what that all and payment processing and what that's all going to look like. But there's a lot more like foundational things that need to be in place. So, getting a unified support phone number out there if you don't have one already, getting a single support email, maybe sending out some emails to your clients to start like planting that seed and more aggressively pushing support requests into these unified channels so that clients are starting to get conditioned to use the support email instead of emailing their technician or project manager directly, right? Those are like some really actionable things that you can go do, implementing a ticketing system or some sort of piece of software like Ian recommended. Jennine, what are some other things, maybe step two beyond those things? Like if assume you're starting there, what are some other like small bite-sized pieces that you would recommend integrators maybe take a look at as a starting point?
Well, I think Ian did a really great job laying out the plan and the things that need to happen and how to do that. For me, it's the people. So oftentimes it's not, just the integrator. We have service coordinators and sales techs. We've got everybody that we have to bring along too. So for me, making sure that it's palatable for the people that the team that you're bringing along that's with you is also feeling progress. Goalposts are going to always move, and making sure that you're celebrating the small wins as a team, recognizing the progress. And when the team feels the progress, they start creating it themselves. The first service plan sold, and you see an integrator literally crying happy tears. It sounds so simple. It's just one. But what it did is it resonated that, wow, this works. And we had a good response. Or the first service ticket closed with a high customer satisfaction rating, and the client was over the moon with us. We try to teach our partners, celebrate that, get everybody bought in. I don't care. bring lunch in over it if you have to, but make sure you're celebrating those small things, because that's success. And then your confidence builds. And then you start really trusting the process. And then you have your own internal team creating the products for you.
Yeah, I think that's great. And like celebrating those small wins is, like really important again from like morale, overall culture standpoint. It's also important just to note that getting from 0 to 1, like that first service membership that you sell, all of the work that had to go into enabling that to get that first
Right.
service program sold. You had to define your plans, your price points, figure out the payment processing, figure out where the client was going to go to sign up. And yes, it's just one plan, but my goodness, like look at all the things you had to figure out just to get there. So like
Right.
really kind of keeping that focus on just like, how do we get from 0 to 1? How do we get out there and have some conversations? Let's push some stuff out there early that's not that hard to kind of unwind or build in the first place, and just get started. You just have to break through that static inertia to get things moving, and momentum will build, and you just kind of have to trust that process. So I think this has all been really good advice. I do want to just touch very quickly on a couple of questions that came in via email before the webinar. So one of these questions was, what are the 3 most important factors to consider as it pertains to selling service memberships? And Jennine and Ian, you are not prepped on this question, so maybe if you guys start thinking about one, and I'll answer first, and I'll say, the 3 most important. I'm tempted to say confidence, confidence, and confidence, because I think that's so critical. Like the ability when you get in front of a client to crisply articulate the why behind this program, what it entails, why it's good for them, and to do that in a way that makes the client feel comfortable and assured is, I would argue, probably the single most important thing. A second factor would be just, proper design of the plans. And that gets back to a lot of the stuff we've talked about. Ideally, by the time you're putting this out in front of clients at large, you've had a few conversations with trusted clients. You've validated some of your assumptions. You have a general understanding of how these are going to be received, because it's not your very first time doing it on maybe a client that you've never spoken with before. Getting pricing right is obviously another one. That can be a tricky thing when you're doing this on your own. Try to reach out in your peer groups and figure out what's going on. At OneVision, we've got lots of data. We're always happy to help consult and advise on pricing strategies. So I think that confident presentation, the structure of the plans, and getting the pricing right are the 3 things that come to mind. Is there anything else not included in those 3 that you guys could think of?
It's a little bit, of the side and something that I kind of mentioned or alluded to earlier, but I think one of the key things to talk about is like how this is not really totally for your business, but you're doing this for your customer. You want to provide them with a consistent and good experience. You want to make sure that when they call in, that they have the same experience every single time, and they're not left wondering, well, how long is it going to take this time? Or something of that nature. You really want to frame it in a way that's a positive for the customer. And that goes back to Jason's confidence, confidence, confidence. But it's all about framing.
Yep, agreed. Jennine, what do you
Yeah.
got? Anything you would add there?
Yeah, I would just add, when people understand the why behind the what, you're not just pushing out a service plan and you're going to pay for service now, you're not going to call me. It's really about the why behind the what, and feeling comfortable with that, confident with that, and being a little bit fearless. Like, let the fear, it's, I get it. It's scary. It's what I said in the beginning. It's uncomfortable. And the success that I've seen in these situations is partners going, this is totally uncomfortable, but we're going to do it anyway. And we're going to trust the process, and kind of wrapping it back to that, like embrace the discomfort. And it's pretty cool to see what happens in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. The other question that I wanted to touch on, by the way, while we touch on this, if you have any questions, comments as we're kind of closing out today, please drop those into the chat. We'll take a look at those before we wrap up. While we're waiting to see if any of those come in, the other question that came in that I thought was a great one was, what have you found as the greatest determining factor of membership retention versus churn? So what keeps members on these plans? The first thing that I want to say in response to this question is that we have lots of data on this, and churn rates are like exceedingly low with these plans. The retention, to put that the other way, retention is extremely high. So
Yeah.
that's great news, right? If you can just push past that fear, get out there and even sell 15, 20, 30 of these plans in your business, like those clients are going to stick around on those plans for quite a long time. I would say the biggest factor that determines retention, as obvious as it's going to sound, is just like delivering on the promise. So things change when you start charging clients for a premium support plan, particularly if that plan includes things like guaranteed response times. So making sure that if you're going to guarantee response times,
Yeah.
include benefits like prioritized scheduling and so forth, if those things are in your plans, just make sure that you have the both like machinery and the kind of culture that just takes those promises seriously. Because as long as clients buy the plan and then get what they signed up for, they're going to stick around. And generally speaking, the biggest thing that's going to bite you is if you just fail to deliver on those promises. Ian, Jennine, anything that you would add there?
I think I would just add the, you know, the what always is, you know, having the ability to, when a client calls in, they have the warm, empathetic, friendly, calm voice that becomes very predictable when they're in a situation where, you know, something's not working. It's a really big problem. It's a really big event, and they're really frazzled. And on top of delivering on the promise, just having that warm, friendly, calming, we've got this, don't worry voice is really what I think keeps clients happy and coming back and understanding the value of the plan.
Yep, agreed. Great points. A couple of things came into the chat here. I see Ian just addressed one of them in the chat, but just for the benefit of everybody else. Oh, and Ian, it looks like your response may have gone to hosts and panelists, so you may want to repost that. Pete chimed in and said, you know, common blocker for me is feeling like my roadmap is not well enough defined to confidently move forward. You recommend AI to speed up the roadmap development process. So on that second question, absolutely. I mean, we talked about AI generally earlier, and it was a little bit of a different context, but but similar in the sense that, again, I think AI is, in my opinion, underappreciated as a tool for strategic development and strategic planning. I use it all the time for this sort of thing. And it's fantastic, provided you invest the time on the front end to give it sufficient context. That's really the name of the game with AI in general. Um, to the broader point there of like getting blocked by this sort of feeling of uncertainty in the roadmap, this is a really common for anyone who's ever tried to keep any sort of like roadmap for their business of like, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, and that's how we're going to sequence things out. That can be like a double-edged sword. You want to find the right balance in terms of having a roadmap. The way we manage ours internally is just with what we call a now, next, later framework. So we're not introducing the extra operational overhead of like trying to put time estimates on everything and figure out like a year into the future exactly what month this feature is going to release. That just introduces a ton of overhead, and there's way too much kind of unpredictability in business. And then more importantly, it kind of paints you into a corner if you make these commitments publicly, especially from being able to respond to things that come up that maybe you didn't anticipate. So analysis paralysis is a real thing. And I would say like that's the biggest thing is keep your roadmap high level, kind of have a sense for like now, next, later, understand that the roadmap is a living, breathing document and that it's going to change, and that's okay. That would be my advice. Ian, you do a lot of roadmap management work as well. So I'd be curious if you wanted to chime in here.
Yeah, you know, I talked about it a little bit in the chat, but one of the things that Jason hit on is like it is living and breathing. When you plan too far in the future, it's maybe not going to be like the items that are next aren't necessarily the most important thing to work on right now. Just because it's been sitting in the next column does not mean that it needs to be the very next thing that you do, because priorities ultimately shift over time. You might hear some really interesting insights from a customer that leads you in a different direction that says, oh my God, if I don't tackle this right now, I'm leaving a ton of value behind. So if you're constantly reevaluating and reprioritizing, I think you're going to end up with a better overall product and a better business than if you're trying to like plan strictly this roadmap and stick to it every stage along the way. It's too rigid of an approach. It needs to be ever evolving based off of the landscape of where you currently are in your business.
Yep. Totally agreed. All right. Well, we are coming down the home stretch here. So I am going to pull up on the screen here just a quick closing slide, and want to thank everybody for being here. Jennine, Ian, thank you guys both so much for jumping into the hot seat here on our first one of these Insight webinars. We look forward to many more of these in the future, and I'm sure we'll have you back on to one very soon. Just want to close out very quickly by reminding everybody, in case you don't know, that here at OneVision, we have spent many, many years working with leading integrators across North America on these exact challenges that we talked about today. So we sincerely do hope that the content of today's webinar will be helpful for you, whether or not you choose to work with OneVision. At the same time, we're here to help, right? So if you're looking to bring in a partner that's got the roadmap and proven experience to go execute on this, we'd love to talk with you. So we provide all the tools, expertise, infrastructure to really eliminate those service distractions, boost client satisfaction, and drive profitability, both through recurring revenue and freeing up resources to go focus on sales and projects instead of putting out service fires all the time. So again, there's a QR code up there on the screen. And if you would like to talk about reducing burnout and freeing up those resources and taking better care of your clients, we would love to chat. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. Thank you once again, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate your time. Be on the lookout for many more of these in the future. These are something we're going to start doing once a month, and we hope you'll show up again in the future. Ian, Jennine, thanks again. Everybody, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care,
everybody.